better than your currency. Splurging millions, buying houses like Monopoly. Fucking 9 to 5, man, the money is a joke to me. Buying cryptocurrency, my money in the privacy. I make it rain dollars, they watch me disappear. I'm so fly, man, I'ma need some land again.
Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of the B.Invested Birchy podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Birch, and this is the show unraveling the truth to the facade of the 21st century. We're now exiting the matrix and waking up to motherfucking reality. Today, I have a special guest. Rid's trying not to laugh here, right? This guy is the most conservative guy out, and he's like, oh, wow, why has Nathan said motherfucking reality? This is a bit of a haul.
Opening statement.
It is. It's like we're living in a world where everything's fake, right? We're being taught by fake teachers, fake news, fake this, fake that, fake food, even down to the point where the money is so fake, the banks are meant to have money and they've all started going bankrupt, right?
It's been an interesting week for sure.
People.
So thanks for having me, everyone.
Banks are bankrupt. We've got Ridhwan Hannan from One Path Accountant. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Nate. It's always a pleasure.
It's going to be fun today.
I think it will be.
It's good. So,
yeah, we've been working together for 10 years now?
10 years now.
Yeah, so it's good.
We've got, a weird world that we live in, and everything's communism nowadays, right? Everything we just got to obey, right? We're living in this world where it's obeying, and we've got, you go to your ATO comes to you and they say you've got to pay up like Gestapo, and we need to have someone to protect us, and Ridhwan is our accountant, and
always happy to take a bullet.
He's a gentleman. And 10 years we've been working together.
10 years in October.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a long time.
It is.
We were much skinnier back then, less grey hair.
Getting there again.
We're getting back. We're going back to the future. We're trying to work out at the moment. Rid's lost some kilos. I've lost some kilos.
You're looking good, actually.
Thanks, mate. What are you doing later?
Walking.
So, Ridhwan is at One Path Accountants. For those of you that, a lot of people think that your accountant, I just go to the guy at the shopping centre with an umbrella out and all that sort of stuff. Like, tax is one part of it, but the overall strategy, right? The people get screwed every day of the week. They can't get loans because they're accountant shit. They can't do this because they're accountant shit. They're paying too much accountant shit. It's not just two-dimensional of let's save some money on tax. That is a part of it, but you need good advisors around you. And I'd love to sit here and tell everyone, Rid, how great I am every week on the podcast. But the reality is that we've got hundreds of people in the business. In your team, how many staff do you have at One Path, roughly?
About 14 now.
14 staff at One Path Accountants. And I could just sit here and say all this cool stuff every week, but in reality, when it comes to tax and structuring and advice and guidance on that sort of stuff, even, as an accountant, you can set up self-managed super fund, right? You can open up the entity.
Yeah, in limited circumstances, we can assist clients doing that. Yeah.
Like, you need financial advice and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Right? You're not a financial advisor, you're the accountant, but the financial advisor then would come back to you and say, hey, we need
set it up.
We're giving you advice. So we'll get into some questions today around accounting, but I just want to do a little introduction.
I've got some questions for you about tax as well.
Okay, great. I'll answer some fun ones, right? What subjects should be taught at school but aren't?
Look, it's a good question, and
they're
obviously
teaching all different subjects at school now.
As we know. Look, it's one of those things, and you see that from the likes of motivational speakers and the people that we talk about quite often about subjects that should teach at school but they don't, money and etc. Those type of things. But I think there is a lot of truth to it, as in a lot of subjects that are taught are really critical. Maths, English, geo, economics, etc. For me personally, economics was an amazing subject because it was like a real sort of touch and feel about the economy. Mm-hmm. I personally think that they should teach a lot more practical subjects. Money is too big a topic, right? But I think how certain systems work, what GST is, what capital gains tax is. I'm speaking purely from an accounting point of view here, obviously, but even other things like why and how properties are impactful for people, how it works. Like, how does the property market work in Australia? It's the most traded thing. It's the most talked about subject, probably in the news, right? Properties. So we don't have any of those questions. We're still teaching people, which is fine, woodwork and
fake history.
Yeah, and look, some history is good history, and there's a lot of history which is problematic, right? So I think that if we taught more topical current events, which is why people do a lot of self-learning like these podcasts, younger people as well, as we know, there's a big cohort of young people trying to get into the financial and investing scene, and so there's a lot of traction that you can get out of learning from real world experience, and I think that's one of the things which are undervalued, right?
Yeah.
Rather than a textbook, real world, right?
Yeah.
And you're seeing now with the likes of the banks in the US and the banks in Credit Suisse, there's a lot of people who've been talking about it for a long while, including yourself, who've been talking about just the logic of it.
Yeah.
You can't keep printing without inflation. I think those are the things which I would recommend that people get into at school.
I actually thought about it just as I asked you the question myself, right? What about controlling your emotions? That's a good one for people. People don't even know their emotions, right?
Yeah, EQ is a really huge, gigantic part about investing, life, everything else.
Everything else. They don't teach you how to be healthy. They don't teach you how to grow your own food. They don't teach you how to be self-sufficient, because they're not teaching you to be critical thinking. Anything that's free is there to, you're the product. It's like Facebook, right? You go onto Facebook, you become the product of Facebook and the asset of Facebook. So the schooling system was designed in 1906, I think it was John D. Rockefeller, put in like $1 billion, which is massive money back then, because he can control the minds of the future.
Yeah.
And he's building up an army of people which will be fitting into the Industrial Revolution. And the system is capped. That's the matrix inside of that.
But don't you think it's interesting now? Like I see it a lot with my clients, is that to some extent everyone's suffering an element of burnout, right?
Yeah.
We're that first generation who probably from a young age had computing. Well, when did you get a phone? I got a phone when I was like 11, 12.
Yeah, 98. I was like 13 or something, and my mum fucking lost it. Like she said, you cannot be sold a phone. I went down to the shop. I paid $1,000 for a second-hand Ericsson GA318.
I had the 768.
Yeah, the change of screen one. Yeah, the
flip out. Yeah. So I think we're the first generation who have had pretty much from quite a young formative age technology. Back then we were doing probably not a great stuff with technologies. Now it's a lot more communicative, etc. But there's a lot of burnout being faced at our level, people who are 35, 36, 37 plus. I see it a lot of the time with my clients. They're like, Ridhwan, I'd like to get into property because I want some financial independence. I want to get into a different business, all those other types of things, investing. And I think it's indicative of what you said, right? If you're not teaching about health, mind well-being or spiritual well-being, for example, then this thing can only get you so far, right? It will gobble you up, right? There's a really good meme where it's like a big hand
over the face,
right? And it's grabbing you in. So I think although we're talking about accounting and tax and everything else in between, it's all intertwined, right? Because people feel like from the schooling system, they've invested all this time in terms of capital of their own personal efforts into school. Well, I've got to go to uni, then I've got to get a job, then I've got to get a house, then I've got to do all the things, which are all good. And I've done them, you've done them, right? But I think
not the uni, otherwise,
but I think
we're forced to do.
Well, you did it by choice, right?
Exactly.
It wasn't something that you go, okay, well, I have to do this because, like, I went to uni and studied commerce and law, and so I was like, well, if I become a garbo, it's going to be a waste for my parents, right? That being said, is I think there's a fundamental shift that's occurring, and you can see it now with a lot of people looking for external avenues of time freedom, financial freedom, mind freedom, that type of stuff, right? So I think if they were to teach that and get more entrepreneurial access into the younger generations, not so that everyone becomes Nathan Birch or other people. It's a case where you can have genuine free minds, not radical minds, free minds, which are doing something productive for the world. And we've got a whole landscape at the moment which is imploding in the tech sector because ultimately they just fell trapped to the same money thing, right? They're all just making money. So
systems rigged. I guess also the second thing I got is the question, we've got lots of topics to discuss today, right? Lots of topics to discuss, but I guess for the audience, like I gave a bit of intro to you, like you are the director at One Path Accountants. What do you do at One Path? What makes One Path different? Who do you look after? Who are the clients?
One of the things that we do at One Path Accounting is we deal specifically with individuals who are looking to deal in property, in investing. Generally speaking, they're multi-property portfolio owners, right? And sometimes I will say to clients, say it 100 times a day, is that some clients want to buy property just because the guy next door that had a barbecue said, hey, property is a really good thing to get into. And one of my really intelligent clients, he said that once his gardener started talking about property, and he's in the States, it was before GFC, so he sold his property just before GFC, because he's like, property is something which is specific. It takes acumen, it takes expertise, and you've seen it where a lot of people go, hey, I can do what Nathan does, and they try and do it, right?
Now, when we first started the business, it was like no one out there. It's like, what, you're a buyer's agent? And now everyone's a fucking hero.
Everyone's a buyer's agent, even people without properties. So I think it's one of those things where what we try and do and how we try and assist clients is the tax, to some extent, is the tax, right? So there's limitations in terms of what we can do about minimizing your tax or being more tax advantageous, and that's really good and it's important. But building that overall portfolio, that position, that's the most important part. Like I had a conversation with a client the other day, and I said, they go, how much is the tax if I sell this property? Like, what's the capital gains tax? And I flipped it and I said, okay, before I tell you that, what are you going to do after you sell the property? And he looked at me blankly. And I go, so are you selling the property because you're happy with the tax outcome, or you know what to do? And I was thinking about conversations that we have. You buy properties or you sell properties about in reference to the next step. Like the tax is kind of the tax.
Pay that when I feel like it.
You pay when you feel like it. It's like when you go to the city, you got to pay the tolls, right? What you're doing in the city, you don't go, I'm not going to go to the city because I've got to pay the tolls.
That's a very good way of putting it.
Do you get it? Right? And so then he looked at me, he's like, I have no idea. So I go, I can tell you what the tax is right now. But if you don't tell me what you're going to do after, then you've made a poor decision. You're basing it on tax.
When people sell a property, it's just that when I see it, is that they don't have an understanding. They've either overcommitted. If you need to sell it for something else for the next step, cool, whatever, right? But if you're selling it just to get money and take profit, it shows that you've got a poor understanding of how money works, because it's just going to get gobbled up in inflation. Imagine someone, like, we've been working together for 10 years. Imagine 10 years ago, one of our clients buys a property for 200 and sell it for 400 in a year, right? They double their money and they go, oh, the fucking hero, right? I've made 200 grand, big time, high fives, let's go buy a Lambo, right? And fill up with tiles in the boot. But the thing is that, I joke about it, we know someone that does the same thing, right? But someone goes and sells their property, they make 200 grand on it. They're not going to call us back in 2023 and say, hey, Rick, I wish I still had the property, it's worth $1 million. I wish I bought more of those properties and all those sort of things. And I've never seen in any year since I started this business, people happy that they sold a property, and that's because the monetary system is screwed and it's flipping up its head.
I use that example all the time. I say, Nathan, if they bought a property and they were happy with it, that they wish they sold it earlier, and they didn't sell it at the price they had sold it, right? Or they hadn't bought next door or whatever it was. And so I think that's the part of where we impart advice with regards to, we don't provide good, bad, buy or sell advice. That's your job. That's your financial advisor job. But to put the tools into your arsenal to make a decision as to why you're purchasing or why you're selling, for me, that's the critical element, right? And I think people have to understand is that you can make a really good decision about buying a property, but you can do a lot of different things around it which are poor. Right? You can take the equity out and,
buy something
silly. Or you could, for example, never take the equity out and never act on it, right? That might not be silly, that might be risk averse, but you have to at least have the understanding, have a conversation with your advisor to say, hey, I've seen this, so I've seen clients do this many, many times. And I'm the first person to say it, right? Is that if you see something that's good, there's nothing wrong with copying it to improve your life, right? You don't lose out, and you know that firsthand. How many people have started businesses off the back of what you do, right? Like they've literally just copied you and doing exactly the same thing, right?
None of them copy the
You've created multi-millionaires just from your blueprint,
exactly.
right?
They can't copy the outcome.
Right? And I think that's really important. So I think from, in answer to your question, we deal with, small businesses, individuals, clients who want to build multi-property portfolios, clients who just want to have a couple of properties to be able to reduce debt in their later years.
Professionals, like medical,
everything in between. We've got concreters, we've got surgeons, we've got everything in between, and we treat every client with the respect that the clients come to us and we're assisting them and serving them, but also we're trying to get them focused to say, hey, think about what's next, and then that's a really important point.
It's actually interesting that you say that, Red, because I was talking to some Blink staff before him today on podcasts, and we're talking about what we do differently. And the answer that we had was that we're asking them what are their goals. We want to know what they want. And I think too often in life, people are telling them what they should be doing. Like, this is what you need, this is what you need, this is what you need. But it's like, well, how does that affect me and how does it benefit me? And, you know, we all are working together to make sure that our investors are getting the right outcome, whatever that goal is for them. Some people might want to be playing with their kids at home, some people might want to be traveling the world and partying, and everyone's lifestyle is different.
Yeah.
So
I think that's one thing that we probably don't do well, and it keeps us kind of hungry.
Yeah.
We don't go back through our client base and say, oh, we've helped ABCD, or we've been part of that success journey.
Yeah.
We're just like kind of thugging it out every day and going, no, every day is new.
Yeah.
We've got 10 new clients, we've got to get to that point, right?
Yeah.
So, and clients, I'll be very honest, some clients go, oh, you know, I want to pay no tax.
Yeah.
I go, declare no income.
Yeah.
Super easy.
Yeah.
But I can't help you, right?
Yeah.
But what I can
And
get
get no
you,
property.
you get no
You can't
property,
get away.
just don't have anything, right? Just
Yeah.
get hold of it, right? But what we can do is we can work collectively to say, okay, you're going to have to pay some tax. I pay tax. You pay tax sometimes.
I always joke about it, right? I hear about it. Just think about it this way, right? And I'm not trying to piss anyone off that does a tradie that does cashies, right? But there's people out there. Tell me, who do you know? Like, just go think about, like, if you don't want to pay tax, right? I'm telling you, right? And I don't even fucking know any of these people, right? But I'm telling you, I know the answer to this. If you look at, I don't like these people, right? But like, you think about the big people that have got money out there, right? Like the Elon Musks or the Jeff Bezos or any of these fucking guys, right? They're not paying a 30%, 40% tax on their income that they've earned this year and their net worth position and all that sort of stuff, right? You go and look at the tradie that's going, give me a cashy, I'll give it to you cheaper and shit like that, right? How many people that do cashies do you know that are successful, like very successful, right? Like, yes, they've got good money, they might have a cool car or whatever the case may be, but are they truly successful, right? And people are trying to take the 5 cents off the table, the 10 cents off the table by doing cashies and dodge the system or whatever. You give a 10% discount, you save 10% on tax. But if that tradie was smart, he would structure his business in a specific way where he can grow his asset base, he can grow his position and still pay no tax, right? So it's about how do you structure that tax minimization. Like, if you're a tradie and you're providing to the system and you're going out and buying things and stuff like that, like, I always think to myself, I was going to buy a car, right? You know that I was sending you the car. And I said I was going to hit a weight goal, then I was going to buy a cool car, right? I was going to buy a mad fucking car, right? And I asked the guy, I said, is your car, it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I said, is that car, is it owned under your personal name or is it owned under your company, right? Because if it's owned under his personal name, you might be thinking, okay, I can save some money, but I'm not going to get the GST back on it, right? It can be under their personal name, but you may not be able to get the same tax benefit. So it's how you purchase any purchase. If I can't claim it in life, I don't want to purchase it, right? And I want to find, how can I claim these things? What can I do? And I want to spend all my money. So I'm not sitting on cash. I openly tell everybody every fucking day, I spend all my money. I have no money in my bank account. I want it fucking gone, right? Get it out of there. So whether I'm buying new laptops for my staff, whether I'm buying marketing, advertising, we've got some new branding stuff coming out. You know, whatever I'm investing into something better. And people are trying to cut costs because they're trying to cut things so they can save, but they don't have a full understanding of how that system works, which is really important.
Yeah, so I think what you said is really important in the sense that you're not spending it by wasting it, you're investing it, right? And so I think that's important, you know, back to your point in terms of the car, even if it's not claimable, right?
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, right? Even if it's not claimable, it's achieving a goal, that's totally fine. But I think what's important, if you're a tradie who's looking to buy an awesome car or whatever it is, and you're doing cashies, et cetera, that's fine. But that asset that you got because you've paid 20%, 25% less tax, company rate of tax is 25 now, what you've done is that car was a singular transaction.
Yeah.
But your tax return can last 18 months.
Yeah.
You can buy 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 properties in 5 years based on a solid reporting process, right? So you can buy one car, and except for the COVID years, cars have always gone down in value, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to return back to normal, and we're already seeing that, right? So I think to your point is that you're really hurting yourself, or you're really putting yourself in a position of long-term difficulty, short-term gain for sure. It's like it's when we were like, thin, we're eating it up.
Yeah.
And then you get fat and you go, oh crap, it takes a lot of work to go back down, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with investments. Like there's a certain point, we call it the golden run. If you're 45 and you haven't done anything, then you've really got max, 10 years?
Yeah.
Because the banks at 55 will go, you're going to retire in 10 years, so we can't do anything for you, right? I think it's really important and clients do it. And I was talking to a client recently who's quite young, quite successful. You've helped him out. And he's like, I never thought I'd be in this position. I think that's really important, right? A lot of people don't know how they got there.
Yeah.
But when they get there, they go, I want to do more of it, right?
Yeah.
They've taken the risk, so kudos to them.
Yeah.
They give you, or they give, their advisors the benefit of saying, hey, I've done this.
Yeah.
And they've listened. So if it's a guy who's on cash and you're saying, hey, dude, don't be a cashy, actually go off and record this and determine and calculate what your tax should be, it'll work better for you.
Yeah.
And they do that and they take that bitter pill of paying a bit of tax, then it's a better option, right?
I was talking to one of our mutual clients last night, and he wants to buy a new principal place of residence. So I said, look, how much do you have? And he said, I've got retained earnings of like 60K, 70K, something like that in there. And I said, okay, cool. I said, well, maybe you might need to put that, disburse it to yourself as an income, because then that will help you, get it. Like, you need to be able to show it. And I was like, we're just talking about it. I was like, if you pay an extra 10 grand tax, 20 grand tax, and it's like, you should be playing a big game. Like, you should be, like, this guy here, we're sitting there, we're like, cool, like, we'll get you there. And he's like, okay, yeah, cool, right? People wouldn't want to pay that extra 10 grand in tax, but that's going to open them up to be able to buy their dream house.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, even from yourself, like you recently, purchased a place that it may not be your dream house, but you really love it, right?
It's a dream house for today.
Yeah, it's a dream house for today, right? So I think that's important is that was hard work, right? I bought my place, you saw it, it was hard work, right? Yeah. It doesn't come easy. Like, you can't just not pay tax and then suddenly rock up and buy, $2 million plus house, right? Exactly. It's really difficult. So I think everyone's got to be practical. Everyone's got to work within the guidelines, and to some extent, you've got to take a little bit of salt out of what you hear around the water cooler, barbecue, and TikTok, right? And say, hey, have you thought about this idea where you don't pay tax and you recycle your debt?
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got to do the time, and you've got to take that length. Like, how long have you been investing for?
20 years.
20 years, right?
20 years.
This
20 years.
Unbelievable.
38
right?
this year.
Yeah.
20 years. 18 years old.
Unbelievable, right?
Old prick.
Old, but look, how people say, you hear those motivational things by Grant Cardone and Gary Vee. They go, you got to struggle every day and you got to do this every day. Man, you've been doing it for 20 years. Right?
I have a good life, loads of struggle, but
exactly
it's the cost of being successful.
Exactly right.
It's the cost of it. So I know my position. I was actually in the car with someone, right? And I had just a shit afternoon. It was like about, 4 weeks ago, right? I was just driving. I was at my holiday house. I was just driving. I had someone in the car, and I had like 4 or 5 phone calls, like one after the other. It was 3:50 on a Friday afternoon. It was just like people wanting shit. People saying, if you don't do this in the next 10 minutes, blah, blah, blah. This is stupid shit, right? And I was like, okay, cool, sort that out, right? I just turned to my mate and I said, I just want a fucking simple life, right? And do you know what he said? This guy's full anti the system, right? Full anti the system. And he turned around to me and he said, "Go get a job in government. Right? You want a simple, easy life? Go get a job in government, right?" And before he even said it, I said no, right?
Yeah.
And then I had all these like anxiety that came over me. I thought, what would that be, right? That would be someone packing up their desk at 3:59, waiting for 4 o'clock because they've got an extra hour of leave, and they can work out, are they going to buy the beer at the pub, or they're going to have the snitty at the pub, right? And there's sacrifices that people have to have. And I'm like, I get to do what I want when I feel like it, and that's the hustle that I've done, right? I've created the lifestyle that I wanted to, and the cost of whatever it could be painful in the day, that's the cost of getting through to the next level. And people,
and I think you can't do that without paying tax. You can't do that without having sound financials that you can get lending on. Even if you're working for the government, it's great. My wife used to work for the government, right? It's brilliant. But you've got to put that on the road, right? And if you do that and you put that on the road, then you'll be in a position where you can achieve something for yourself. You can't blame others.
Exactly.
We've been in situations where people are opportunistic and try and blame others and extract cash. That's short-lived, right?
Yeah.
only thing you can do is struggle for 20 years, hustle, do what you need to do. I hate the word hustle, but do what you need to do for 20 years and just keep plugging away.
Throw around so shit on Instagram Reels, hustle,
right.
So motivation, so on.
I get the idea of it, but I think it's part of it is that it's rushed.
I'm committed.
Right?
I'm committed.
Yeah, exactly right. You're dedicated.
I understand I have to make a commitment, and those things. And are they really sacrifices? I sacrifice my youth, right? But I live my life how I want. I do whatever I want. I said to you the other week, I was like, oh man, I'm having a tough week, and then I pulled up with a fucking 30-foot caravan, right? Having a tough day.
Well, funnier for me was, Ridhwan, I can't do my steps in Sydney. I'm going to Newcastle to my holiday house to do my steps. I was like, right.
Literally, right? I'm walking the beach every day. And it's like, those things, like, it's like, they're just choices, they're just options, and it's, like, you could sit there and listen to like Grant Cardone, they go, oh, look at my jet and stuff. I remember that guy 5 years ago before he was doing his business and changed his business, he was selling used car salespeople books and catalogues and stuff, and suddenly he's a property expert. But, there's no discredit to him. I just think that it's a model, and it's a business model, and it's a show, and, I know how hard it is to get to a level of success and pushing out, doing the grind, and, building up that capital behind you. And we live in a world now, and I still have all the questions to ask you. So we might have to split this into two podcasts.
Tangential sometimes, right? But it's okay.
The banks, right? Like, we've been texting about this every day since the bank started to crumble, right? People are fearful of debt, right? The banks are bankrupt, right? The bank is bankrupt. Whoever would have fucking thought the bank is bankrupt, right? Do you know why? Because they have debt. The banks have debt. The bank doesn't even own its own money.
Yeah.
Right? So people are fearful of debt. There's a mindset shift from that. And it's like, the companies have debt, governments have debt. The US is up to 31.6 trillion in debt, and it will be about 32 trillion in the next 2 to 3 weeks, right? And the system is based on debt. Money is debt. And we had a joke about this years ago about when I said we had some friends giving us some grief about a few things, right? And they had their own opinions on it, and they said I was completely wrong. And it was like, I got up and walked out. And I'm like, the debt is the asset. I turned around and I said the debt will become the asset, because like the loan that you've got won't go broke. That is an asset.
That'd be nice.
Hey?
Sometimes it'd be a nice thought.
It would be great if it does, right? It will, though, because you hold on to it, and when you pay it off, it'll be worthless, right? It'll be easy to pay it off. But that's the world we live in. Like, the banks are literally going bankrupt from the debt.
Yeah, look, I think it's more systemic of the time, and what you've been talking about during COVID and all the mentoring seminars. We had many discussions for hours about how the system, in terms of how we've been used to getting free money, or not us, but the public. They keep printing it, and so it's quite easy. And so that kind of steroid effect on the economy was great, because you've got people buying. I find it weird. I go, okay, I'm an accountant. I see what a lot of people earn. I'm like, when I go on the street and I go, man, that guy's got like a $2,000 pair of shoes on. This lady's got an $8,000 handbag. Like, I don't fully get it, but all power to you. But to some extent, it's emboldened by the fact that credit was easy, and the banks did the same thing, right? They've gone out and given loans at low rates, or they've gone and invested at 1 or 2 points on bonds, and then now they've gone, 5-6%, and the short-term money they're giving out is even worse, right? So it's one of those things where I think if the average punter or the average person is investing, to some extent understands risk, quite basically like the risk of their own household and their own budget, it's not being applied at the top, right? And why? Because it's not taught at schools. And why? Because everyone who is meant to be an expert is running the show, right? And if it was really this good, would it blow up, right? Like, there's no other real environment like this. Like, you saw GFC, you saw GFD.
They're getting bigger and better. They're getting bigger and better each time it blows up, right? Imagine after this, it's going to be amazing, right? And so I heard something, like, this is like, we're just recording this at the time that the banks are collapsing, but there's a big one, the big one that's out there. I heard they got a bailout this morning already.
Credit Suisse?
They got a bailout. Like, that's what I heard. I've seen it. I haven't been on the phone. There was like articles that had read to the level of getting a bailout. So it's like, it's just amazing. If you look at all of the people that benefit from all of that that liquidity that was injected in the system, right? It's like a drug, right? If someone, like, I've never touched drugs, but people don't believe me, but I say I've never done it. I've never touched you obviously haven't. You ever had a drink or a cigarette, right? But I've never touched, like, Coke, nothing, right? People always go, oh, bullshit, Birch, you've had that. Imagine if I had a fucking bag of Coke, I'll be all over the fucking shop, right? But if someone does a line of Coke, right, they're going to have a come down at some point, right? Someone goes and has a big pissathon, they're going to have a hangover and come down, right? And you always got to pay for the cost of what you've done.
Absolutely.
So if we look at the cost of what's happened, right, you've got the banks, which had this big, injection of liquidity, and now they've got to pay for it, right? This is the time to come up and to account for it. It's the day of judgment for it, right? There's the people that benefit. Let's say we look at the building industry. Every day there's a builder going broke. We all know of some builder that's going to go broke next, right? Whatever, right? We've seen the builders, the writings on the wall, but who was the biggest recipient of the money that was injected? They injected it straight into the system in the housing market, and it went straight to the tradies, right? And they all went out and bought a new Dodge Ram, right? And they all went out and did these cool things, and suddenly they can't afford it because it's unsustainable. They didn't know how to handle what was given to them because it wasn't natural, it wasn't a part of the cycle. And we're not living in normal times, we're not living with predictable thing. But if you can take that time, energy and effort to understand and have the right people around you and the right advice and the right knowledge, then it helps you take advantage of the matrix. And that's
for sure. Like, I think it's really important that everyone learn and try and take control. But more importantly, outside of all of that and all the esoterical events that are going on, if you have your own financial plan, if you have your own investment plan, whether it's in property, whether it's in whatever it might be, and you've got enough people out there who don't like property, but if that's what it works for you, then that's great. So
build a business. There's heaps of ways to make money, right? Property is my favourite. Right? I've made money out of businesses, all different types. I own a fucking Chinese restaurant. I still find it funny, right? You buy a Birchy. I literally have, when I do my tax return, fucking thousands of dim sims that I'm selling, right? Right? You can do whatever it is that's going to get you there, right? But a lot of people get stuck making the active income, whether they're in their job, whether it's in their business, and they rarely take that active income and turn it into passive income. And that's how you get to live life on your terms, is having that recurring passive cash flow out there. But
it takes time.
Yeah, it takes. Yeah. But it doesn't matter where it is. So I've got a couple of questions. We're going to do another podcast after this, so we can do a second one with Red, time permitting. But of the discussion that we're going to have.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it.
Cool chats. But I guess as a wrap up of this one, got a few questions, other questions. So if someone was to own a property for more than 10 years, how much tax would they be exempt from?
So it depends. If it's an investment property, their own personal property. But let's just speak investment property.
Let's just say personal property for now. If
they're living in it?
Yeah.
If you're living in it and you've never rented it out, it's tax-free. You can sell it, it's tax-free, right? I think most people know that, but there is some nuances there. If you went overseas for a little bit, for example, or you went interstate and it was vacant, or was rented out for less than 6 years and you didn't have another investment property or another principal place of residence and you're just living somewhere else, then it can be tax-free as well. And there's sometimes, difficult advice that people have to get. I had a client the other day who rang, I think it was one of your clients actually, and she had a property which is partially rented out since she bought it, and that changes the dynamic of it. If you have you lived in it and then departed from it and rented it out, it's one thing, but if you sort of rented it out or converted into an income stream whilst you're in it, the tax office gets a little bit greedy and they say, hey, from day one we're gonna slice a little bit of capital gains tax off, right? So some people get greedy and they want to claim the interest on their mortgage and all that type of stuff, and we also not to, depending on the situation. But if it's an investment property, so long as you've held it for more than 12 months, then you get your capital gains discount, which means that any gains that you have, you get to halve. And our tax rate being 45, 47%. Your long-term properties, your long-term capital gains on properties held for more than 12 months is about 23.5%, right? So it's, in my opinion, it's manageable. It's good. You can forecast. You can do those things. If you've got a property long-term, always get the advice on how much it's going to cost you to sell.
Cool. If there was one piece of advice that you could give the audience on growing a property portfolio, what would it be? You've been lost today.
Look, there's a lot of things, and none of it's financial advice. A lot of things that clients do incorrectly, we sort of touched on it before, is that everyone's in the position where they want to sell to get more, right?
Yeah.
And often, and I had a client the other day, I said, well, if you sell, this is your tax event. This is what you crystallize this tax event.
Yeah.
If you had to access the equity and you need to work out with your broker, you can do that. If if you're willing to take on the debt and the risk, then there's no tax event, right?
Yeah.
And that's really important. So I think what people need to do in terms of building their property portfolio is that you don't be structure crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, you don't have to go out and have 3 properties and 3 trusts and a piggy bank trust and all the other stuff that they sell you. Really what you need is properties, right? That's really what's going to help you. And then structuring that strategically over the long term is good.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong having properties in your own name. But selling can be an option. You've done that where you've sold to get 2 or 3 or 4 more and you've given clients advice to do the same. In something like super, you can't access equity. So you've only got one option, right?
Yeah.
But in every other environment you do.
The tax event is lower in there anyway.
Tax event is significantly lower, it's 10%. So I think that if the one piece of advice I'd have to clients is that if you're looking to build a large property portfolio, try not to sell, because then you have to buy another one to replace it, right? And that's really important. But if you've got a strategic plan as to why you're selling, great, it's perfect. So I think do that. Don't be structure crazy. Be prepared to invest where you're uncomfortable investing or living, right? I read a book this morning, or not a book, an excerpt of a book where it was talking about investment, and it was talking about all the things that you'd think about for your own home. What does it look like? Street appeal, all these things, which from my experience are useful, but not necessarily the sign of a good investment.
Probably someone without a property.
So I think that's a really good thing. And, for me, the most impactful thing is that we don't know what we don't know. And it's like anything in 2023. You can Google it, you can YouTube it, and you think you know that cursory level of information, but break through that little thin layer of information.
Yeah.
Then what do you know? You need someone who's going to assist you for, to get from 1 to 10.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Sound advice. You said you had a question for me beforehand.
I did have a question for you. I said, how often do you think about tax implicated reasons when you buy and sell properties?
I think about it, like I have a good knowledge base of it, right? So I think about it and I think about 10 different things it could be, but I don't make a decision based on a tax outcome. I never do that.
Yeah. I think that's a podcast in and of itself.
Really?
Because I think that's where the market, where property spruikers and the rest of it go, oh my God, if you do this, if you do that, it could be the worst tax event of your life, etc., etc.
Because they're shit and they're selling things because they can only sell it because of a tax deduction or a tax advantage. And
correct.
Asset's a bad asset.
Yeah, right. Or they're not, well, to your point, they're not long-term thinkers, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really important where you've got, I don't even know how many properties you've got anymore, it's crazy.
Not enough.
The tax side of things is supremely important.
Yeah.
But it's not the crux of why you invest or don't invest, right?
Yeah.
And I always tell clients,
I structure it around and work out how. I think, okay, I've got the deal. I'm buying the deal because I want to make a deal. I want to make some money. I want to do this. I want to own the asset. And it's not even about the money. Like you see the fucking shit that I buy. I'm like, I'm just buying it because I want the asset, right? And I think, okay, how can I best fit that in from a tax perspective? But you do a podcast on that too.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's really good one, and you could shed a lot of light on that.
Cool. And if someone wants to contact you, Red, how would the audience be able to get in contact with you? And is there an email address, a phone number that they contact you through? Yeah,
absolutely. So the best email is info@onepathAccountants.com.au. And then the local number that we have is 9836 5433 in Sydney.
02,
that's right. And there's a 1300 number, but it's much longer, so that one's a quicker one to get through. Or give Nathan's office a call and we can get in touch. So, I'd be more than happy to help everyone out. And we love seeing clients build properties and portfolios and achieving what they want to do.
Awesome, Red. Well, thanks for everything you do for our community. And we'll catch up with Ridhwan shortly on another podcast. Thanks a lot for tuning in. You can, if you like it, share it with your friends, tag them, like us, all that sort of stuff. Make sure that you subscribe to us every Thursday. Apple Play, Google Play, Spotify, and YouTube. Catch up soon. Have a great day.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah. Like Bilal said, man, we stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar back to die, soon to be hyperinflated. This my 2 cents, don't care if you save it. Joint be decentralized and you will see you been lied to the whole time, and it's the irony, cause they do the exact opposite. You become a slave to the system, enough your money, all they do is profit. There's no conspiracy theory, you better hear me. Crypto will set you free before the system does. I don't care if you do or you don't, but what I'm saying is the truth to the reason you choke. I never been a failure, excuse my behavior. Keep talking, haters doing me a favor. They all tell lies, I know what they been telling you. I'm the opposite, the Donald Trump of Australia. It's amazing, here for the taking. My time is never wasted, just getting wasted. These girls say I'm really breathtaking. I can't help it if I really misbehaving.